Everyone, Walter Crosby with Helix Sales Development, your host for Sales and Cigars. So, had our guest today. I always record my intros after I record the episode, just so that I know what we talked about, and I got a little passion, and I'm always sound a little more excited about this. Today's episode with Steve Multer it's one of those episodes that like I wasn't expecting it to be so much fun and because he's a storyteller and he does corporate storytelling. He's got a cool history. We talk about corporate theater and we talk about how to put a message together. We talk about his book. He gives us a little insight tips and some things that you can do to be a better storyteller and how important this is to make the right kind of connections with our prospects and our customers. How to gain how to gain loyal customers that stick with you for life. And it starts with how you tell the story and how you make those connections, your passion and the value. And go grab a cocktail, go grab a cigar, strap in for another fun, interesting, and profitable episode of Sales and Cigars. Thanks. So, Steve, welcome to Sales and Cigars. I appreciate you taking some time out of your busy day to jump on and have a conversation.
Walter, such a pleasure. So good to be with you. Thank you for bringing the cigar in. I got a cocktail here with me, so we're paralleled. Happy afternoon.
Yeah, this is a nice a nice touch, right? Because very few people have a cigar, and a few more will have a cocktail. So I appreciate the effort.
Absolutely.
And we're drinking a sidecar.
We're drinking a sidecar. So years and years ago, I was speaking in Las Vegas on a conference, and my client, I had never had a sidecar before, and my client took us to, I'm going to block right now. I can't even believe it. Delmonico's. We went to Delmonico's, okay. And I said, you know what? I don't want to do anything normal. Create something fun. What do you guys do brilliantly? And the guy literally said, have you ever had a sidecar? It's like, I don't even know what it is. So this drink was so popular. Back at the same time that the martini came around is when the sidecar came around. But for some reason, the martini never fell out of favor, and the sidecar vanished. Nobody wanted to do it anymore, and it was out of trend for like 40 years. And then somebody in about the 1980s, I want to say, said, whatever happened to that drink, that great sidecar drink? Started to bring it back a little bit, and Delmonico's decided to be the champion of the sidecar. And so this is probably late 1990s, maybe early 2000s. I had one. I said, are you kidding me? That's my cocktail. So for 20 years now, this has been my cocktail. I just don't normally have it in the middle of an afternoon like you and I are doing right now. But again, celebratory.
I have a friend whose his weekend starts on Thursdays around 5 o'clock, a happy hour. So we're just a little early. It's okay. We'll be fine.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere. Isn't that what they always say?
Well, that's what Jimmy says.
Sure.
So let's. I want to talk about the book. I want to talk about the idea of telling a story, and you have, nothing gets sold until the story gets told, and I love that. But let's talk a little bit about your journey to how you got to where you are. It's interesting. Share that, kind of bring people up to speed, and then we'll dive into the book.
All right, I appreciate that. Thank you. So I came actually out of a theater background up until I was about 30 years old and accidentally made the transition during the dot-com era of the mid to late 90s into what at the time was known as corporate theater. The idea of still being on stage in front of an audience, speaking to people, but only this time on behalf of corporations. Whether they're working to sell a product, a service, a solution, a capability, I was out there trying to help them tell their stories. And that was the beginning of what I did with a company called Tivoli Systems that is still out there. It had just been purchased by IBM, and they were my first client, and it started to roll. And my second or third big client, I think, was Cisco at the time. And I still am a primary voice and face for Cisco and have been now for 26 years here at this particular point. But a lot of different corporations that I have grown to work for over the years, Cisco, HP, Fujifilm, Siemens, Bayer, Splunk, NTT Data, Reva Group, Lufthansa, a number of large global corporations that I support. I sort of adapted over the years from the concept of corporate theater into the concept of corporate storytelling, which is about helping these large corporations, fortunes, mid-size, sometimes even startups, entrepreneurs like maybe some of the folks who are fans of your show, helping them to delve deep to the heart of their corporation, of their story, of why the company began in the first place, the problem, the obstacle that it was trying to solve or overcome, and how to really get back to that human heart of the company and help to tell that story instead of simply telling a product story. Because what we know is when you can combine great quality product or capability with a phenomenal story, that's what really creates that connection to an audience and helps to really leverage a fan base for what it is that you do. So that's what I do today, and that's in a number of different ways. Again, as a corporate spokesman, in keynote capacity and conferences, trade shows, sales meetings, and so forth, but also as a sales team trainer, an executive trainer for everything from executive presence to winning communications skills, and then corporate writing as well, and a variety of other different capacities, and now as an author.
Yeah, okay, so I got a couple of questions about the piece. So, you're helping leaders, whether that be a Fortune 500 CEO or an entrepreneur, get better at getting to the heart of their story, and it's like the why that they started the business, or what drives them to the passion is, I think, one of the words that we're going to talk about. But that you have to draw that out of them, or is it just kind of percolating below the surface, and they just need to be able to wrap their head around the concept of sharing that?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, Walter. What we frequently find, so you mentioned the why, right? You mentioned the Simon Sinek Golden Circle concept of being able to sell to the why, and then the how, and then the what, and going from the inside out instead of from the outside in. What I frequently find with a lot of my clients that I work with, and again, these are multinational global organizations. In the case of Cisco, you've got 80,000, more than $500 million worth of valuation. What I frequently find is that a lot of the companies I work with, they have become so expert at what it is that they do. They have forgotten the backing, the heart, the reason why they do what they do. So that goes to the Cynic concept. But it's less about understanding who your organization is at its heart. And again, this is whether you're a startup or a long established company. It's less about that than it is about being willing to communicate the humanity of your organization to your target audience and industry. So as I help these Fortune brands and their leadership to create connection to their customers, their partners, to media, to analysts, and so forth, it's about helping them to tell a better story that connects what they build, what they create, with why it matters to them personally, why it matters throughout their organizational hierarchy, and why it should, in fact, matter to everybody who they choose to tell that story to. That's the foundation of what it is that I try to accomplish with my clients.
I mean, and I think that's really, really powerful. I, I was reading a story the other day, and I can't remember where, but the Phil Knight Nike "Just Do It," right? That whole, I'm going to call it a movement, but that little message, I always thought "just do it" meant, go win and go get it done.
Mhm.
But this guy told the story about how Phil explained it to an audience. He had stand up if you were a runner, right? And then, keep standing if you run 4 or 5 times, 4 or 5 times a week, right? He kind of went through this progression. And if you run every day in the rain, the temperature, and the cold, right? There was fewer people standing. He goes, Nike is the group of people that are standing on the sidelines cheering you on, right? And it was just about doing it, just about getting out there and doing it consistently,
Absolutely.
which is a different take on what kind of, at least my interpretation of what was out there. So, when I was thinking about this conversation and that, learning about Nike, it's like he had it. He could do what you were trying to get other people to do, but somehow that got translated poorly in the commercials and because at least for Walter, it didn't land for me that that's what that was really about.
You bring up three really, really good points here. So first of all, when Just Do It came around, it was during the Michael Jordan Bulls era, right? And we were so busy tying together the Nike brand with what we saw Jordan doing every single day out on the court, which was magical. It was so spectacular. And so, of course, Just Do It meant just go win, just go be the best. What was so good about that corporate story, and we are surrounded by phenomenal corporate storytellers, and we can talk about who those brands are, those incredible brands that have really mastered corporate storytelling. But if we look at Nike, who is definitely one of them, you're right. It wasn't about what Nike was doing or what Nike was creating. It was about the empowerment of everybody within the Nike ecosphere, everybody within their culture who wanted to be a part of that culture, and telling them, you can do anything that you want to do. Just get out of your own damn way and go and make it happen, and you will achieve the goals and the targets that you're trying to achieve. One of the stories that I tell frequently about another phenomenal corporate storytelling brand, Apple, maybe one of the best storytelling brands on the planet, is when Apple puts up their billboards, and you can see them. You'll see the photographs shot on Apple, right? Shot on iPhone, and you'll see them all over. And you'll notice that Apple never talks about the power of their phone. They don't talk about the capability of the camera, how many lenses it has, what the megapixels are. We did that in the past. That's gone. They don't talk about the power structure. They don't talk about the wattage. You know what they put at the bottom? They give the name of the person using an Apple phone who took that photo. They highlight the individual utilizing the product, and they showcase them and not Apple. So they're not out there touting themselves, they're touting the capabilities of the people who are a part of their ecosystem or who would like to be a part of their ecosystem. And that is phenomenal corporate storytelling.
Yeah, Apple, you're right. I mean, it started with Steve, but that, just the imagery, right? The Super Bowl commercial that he wasn't supposed to ever do, that he did, right? The one that that he should have lost his job over, but um, they won, so they couldn't get rid of him, even though they were mad.
One airing,
Uh,
right?
right, just one, but it changed the whole thing.
Yeah.
Who else? It's a two-part question. Like, who else is doing that well, so that the audience can relate to someone else? Because Apple and Nike, big huge brands, and Nike had Jordan, and then all the other sports athletes below him or with him. But and then how do we connect that to that entrepreneurial guy or gal who's trying to to get past that next hurdle, right? They're doing $3 or $4 million, and they want to get to 15 or 20, and they know that they're just not. They have the passion in their belly, but they're not getting it through. So is there another brand, and then like how do we translate that? I know you can help them, but in terms of like what do they need to be thinking about to get them thinking properly or right directionally?
All right, so let's go a totally different path from what we were talking about a moment ago. You've got Apple, you've got Nike, these mega brands. Let's go to something like McDonald's, another incredible corporate storytelling company. McDonald's is rarely going to talk to you in any of their direct corporate story about how their product is made or how it's created. There are two things that a lot of people don't know about McDonald's. First of all, they are not a food company. They are a real estate company because they own the land that every one of their McDonald's restaurants sits on. And their real estate valuation is far above any of their marketing valuation in terms of food. They know what their market is. They know what their brand is all about. Second, they don't talk about the food. What they do is they talk about lifestyle, which is what all of these great brands do. Nike talks about lifestyle. Apple talks about a simplification lifestyle. Budweiser is great at talking about lifestyle. So rather than touting the product, what they're actually doing is telling a story of people who are connected to this product and how their lives are improved, increased by the utilization of the product. And then it is up to the target market to make the determination, I want to be a part of that lifestyle, and my path, my conduit to do it is through that particular product or capability. So frequently when we look at that general concept, and let's say that we've got an entrepreneur startup, somebody who has been out there for the past 4 years doing 100% of the work. Because as we know, with most startups, with most entrepreneurial systems, you've got maybe 2, 3, 4 people who are the people. They're doing everything.
Yep.
Telling a consistent story is the first part, but we frequently get wrapped up in the product details, the metrics, the KPIs, the performance, the investment elements, the bottom line numbers of our product as the story that we tell to the marketplace. And that's going to take us to a certain level. Maybe with key investors, that's going to take us to a level. If you're on Shark Tank, they want to hear the numbers, right? But how does Shark Tank always begin? Begins with the story, the why this particular capability, product, solution is not only necessary to the marketplace, but how it's going to positively impact and change lives by its adoption and incorporation. So usually with anybody who I work with on the entrepreneurial front, I get to a point where I realize, you have become too much of an expert in your own product. And experts tend to think, I got this. I know it all. I'm already good. I live, eat, sleep, breathe this all day long, and therefore I'm going to talk about what matters most. And what matters most is the capabilities of the product itself, the numbers behind the product, the proof points, the awards, whether or not we have met our sales quotas, how much money we've spent, how much money we've invested, how much money we're earning on a regular basis, how our investors are doing in terms of their profitability. And the reality is that will take you up to a point, and then your scalability stops at that stage because you're no longer telling a greater story to a greater marketplace. So if we think about these massive corporations that have been around for years that tell a genius story, they no longer have to talk about their product. Why? Because their product is already successful and it's a known commodity. Now they can start to expand that product outward and tell a more connective human story built on those three pillars of value, passion, and connection that will help them scale up to their desired level, whether it's on a 24-month or a 5-year or a 6-year trajectory.
Okay. So now I've got a question. I've always thought about this. Messaging is how I kind of look at it. And if we're talking about the product as a salesperson, we're probably screwing it up, right? Especially if we're doing it early in the conversation, right? Because most buyers today can go get all that information, right? They don't need us for that. They need us to help them understand if this is going to help them improve something in their life. And I've looked at it. This is how I've looked at it, and I think there might be some parallels here. Mm-hmm. But that people either are trying to gain or get something, in terms of wealth. Think of wealth as this huge bucket. So there's money in there, there's freedom in there, but wealth is something that is part of a lifestyle. Sometimes, and this is more prevalent in B2C, but there's like a relationship component. They're trying to improve their relationship with a family, a spouse, right? And that somebody's offering might be able to help them with that. And then there's like another big bucket of like health. So in the B2B world, I think there's something just kind of missing there that goes beyond money. And I think the idea of the passion lifestyle piece opens that up a little bit more. And I think I'm anxious to talk about that part of it because, if you're selling security systems or if you're selling promotional products, right? It's hard to say you're going to change somebody's life with a new pen or some cool apparel.
That's right.
And with security, you get maybe a little closer. You could save somebody's life, or you can, make them safer or feel safer. Probably more importantly, but I mean, how does this company that's got a cool widget change that thinking, right? And that's what they can buy the book and really probably understand. We'll get to that in a minute, but sure. But let's kind of explore that value, passion, connection component in that context. That'd be helpful to me, and part of this is all about making Walter happy and me. But me learning, right? Because I get happy when I learn something, and I get excited about stuff like this because it's something I can use and put in my head and help my clients with value.
That's why we do this, right? We do this to have a good conversation, like all of the folks who are watching and listening here at this particular point. Same thing, value for them. We're creating conversation and opening opportunity. So, pardon me. So let's kind of start from the foundational. Anytime as an entrepreneur or as a C-suite that you talk about the core differentiator of your product being based on performance, I guarantee you that all of your competitors have their own KPIs that state that their performance is better or the
In
best.
some
Everybody
capacity.
has their own metrics, right? We can't compete on that front. So let's take the security company, the home security company you talked about before, right? We're the biggest in the country, the one that we see on television all the time, that's touted by television celebrities, and then let's say we've got 10 others, and every one of them can show you why their product actually makes your family the most secure. When we're doing that type of marketing or that type of sales, we're putting ourselves at an extraordinary disadvantage, or at least it's a very massive uphill climb, because the consumer, the buyer, is confused. They don't know which one to pick, so they're going to go based on something else. If it's the numbers, that's not going to work, because these three leaders all have numbers that indicate that that's a fantastic investment. They'd be great with any one of them. What's below that? What is the next part? The next part is the story that that particular company sells. So when we talk about adding value, you stated it so beautifully a moment ago. Everybody thinks of value in terms of money and bottom line. We've been trained to do this. And for those of us who are in business, we're very much trained to do it. One of my mantras, I got about 40 of them, but one of them is never chase a dollar. Don't ever chase a dollar. Do what you love and the dollar will chase you.
Love
The
it. That's
difference
great.
between those top three home security teams is going to come down to whichever one of those home security teams or sales representatives demonstrates the most passion for their individual product and the most genuine belief in their product that this is in fact the best one and has the story to tell to back that up. That's what is going to make the difference for the consumer trying to decide between those three capabilities. So for example, if we think of a vehicle, right? I'm in the market for a new car, and I've decided I'm either going to buy the BMW, I'm going to buy the Mercedes, or I'm going to buy the Acura, or whatever it happens to be. And all three of them are going to tell me why their car is the best car. What am I truly buying? Well, I might convince myself that the technology of one of those cars is better than another. Or I might buy one simply based on the price tag alone. I don't want to buy the bottom price, the top price. I'm going to go for the middle price. More likely, I have some sort of an emotional connection or attachment to the story that that particular auto manufacturing brand has created for me. And whether that story is true or false, sometimes it's beside the point. Humans are emotional creatures. We work on emotion before we work on intellect, and we all know this. So I'll tell one more story about this. There's a hierarchy story that I like to tell about intelligence or informational incorporation. Most companies are doing the reverse in terms of their salesmanship, their marketing, their storytelling for their brands. The way these things run is that we incorporate new information on three different levels of hierarchy. And the first level of hierarchy is as people. We process any input that comes in of the 10,000 pieces of stimuli that roll into our lives on a daily basis. We first are going to process a piece of stimuli from the human personal level. Does it connect with me, with my values, with my beliefs, with my moral system? Do I believe that this messaging has value? If it passes that criteria, then we get to the second level of hierarchical information intake, and that is as consumers. Do I believe that this is worth my investment of time, money, whatever it happens to be? If it then makes it through that, then we assess based on our status as employees. How does it affect our job? What it is that we do for our corporation, what it says on our business card, and whether or not we believe that this is the right choice to make, the right purchasing decision to make for our company. And what I like to say is, it doesn't matter who you are. So let's say that you, pardon me, that you are Chuck Robbins, chairman and CEO of Cisco, right? You're running this massive, massive, multi-billion-dollar value, huge multinational corporation. And then right next to Chuck Robbins, I've got an entrepreneur who is just kicking their brand off the ground and not sure how to begin making that market share, but they're right at the launch point and they want to make sure that the next 2 years perform in the way that they would like it to. Both of those people are going to process information in the exact same hierarchy. It's the same way that you, Walter, or me, Steve, would process information. First as humans, second as consumers, third as employees. And most companies do that backward. They start by marketing to the brand, to the company, to the employee first. Then if they can get through that, they try to market to the consumer and why they should buy it. And they leave the human completely behind. They never bother marketing to the person, even though that is the first barrier that has to get past in order to create a successful sales cycle.
So they missed the mark from the giddy up, from the first.
You're right. They've already put themselves at a massive disadvantage. And if there are 3 home security systems out there trying to make the sale, and one of them goes to the human first, consumer second, and employee third, and the other 2 do it in reverse, I guarantee you the first one is the one that wins that business. Because the direct competition is not about the metrics, not about the KPIs. It's about those things that make you great at what you do, because they're not unimportant. Everybody wants to hear those things. But it has to be blended together with a good story that creates connection between the person doing the selling and the person doing the buying, or between the corporation doing the selling and the corporation doing the purchasing.
So we need to speak to them in all of those ways, but if we don't tie it up and give them that connection piece to their station, their role, their employee role, all the rest of that is just confusing noise that they're going to just go this other direction, or they're going to use a decision criteria that isn't helpful. They may make a bad decision, but the fact is they made a decision because we didn't position the product properly to make the connections for them.
Yes.
So
I frequently say, I'm sorry to interrupt, I frequently say, so let's go back to politics. Before we even started this, we were briefly talking. I'm not going to linger on it. Only to say that a lot of politicians, it's not that the other person won. It's that you lost. You didn't tell the right story. You didn't create that right level of connection, so you allowed the other person to be victorious. So frequently when we see very tight elections, that differentiation is in the story that was being told, not in the metrics, the numbers, or the performance itself. And it's something very important to keep in mind, especially for an entrepreneur, but also for a corporation that's been around a long time, is very well established, and forgot their own story, why they started things to begin with, because they end up creating these very, very challenging barriers to get past to allow them to continue to expand or grow into the future.
There's another couple of examples that pop into my mind, like Starbucks. Who in their right mind, because Starbucks is really kind of a bank. They sell coffee, but they're kind of a bank given the app, what they have, right? You know, that cash position that we give them. I mean, think about it. They have like a $1.2 billion in our cash, right? That's bigger than most banks. And they don't have the regulations where they have to do anything with that cash, right?
They can
give it to,
they want it.
yeah, they can give it to Howard, or they can go build more stores, or whatever they want to do. But so how does that entrepreneur that's sitting next to Chuck in your example before, that's trying to get to another level, not screw this up, make it, but be able to build it, because they can't go out and buy Super Bowl commercials. Right. They can't go out and buy, even small media in their markets. They can train their salespeople to say the right things. The marketing that they are doing on social media and emails and whatnot can be, the messaging needs to be that direction. But is that enough to get them launched? Is that what they should be doing?
Absolutely. Now, I'll answer that from 2 fronts. So first of all, if you're listening to the conversation that Walter and I are having right now, and you're thinking, all right, what I need to do is assure that when I hit my launch point, whatever that happens to be, my investors are in place, I've got the product ready to go, but in terms of the launch, what do I do before that launch? It's about building community. And you're going to hear this again and again and again from sales leaders, that before you go live, if you can go live with a community already behind you, people that are passionate about the capability, people that see the value and want to see you succeed in what it is that you're creating, that community is going to get you not only over the launch, but it's going to also sustain you for a good chunk of time past the launch. What that then buys you is the ability to tell stories on a one-on-one basis, because every story counts. Look at what you and I are doing together right now, Walter, right? We've got a one-on-one. We've got other people, a lot of other people listening in, paying attention, interested in what we're talking about. But you and I get the opportunity to bounce ideas off of one another, share our insights and our expertise for the benefit of each other. Everything grows. It's a raise all boats scenario. So when people worry about large advertising budgets, I always say that the freshest entrepreneur, first time out, never done it before, has every bit as much power as Apple does to tell a phenomenal story about their product, again, built on those three pillars of value, passion, and connection. So no opportunity to storytell is ever a lost opportunity unless we choose to squander it. We also want to make sure that everybody within the hierarchy of our organization is telling the same consistent story so that we are always crystal clear on who we are, what we're about, and why we care, why we give such a damn about what we do and why we wish others would do so as well. But also we create the consistency and the congruency that gives our product, that gives our new corporation or our existing corporation credibility and trust within the marketplace. So whether you're telling a story to millions at a time in a big scattershot Super Bowl ad, or you're telling it to literally one person sitting across the table from you as you have a beer or you meet together within their office, it has equal value and equal power. Because as we all know, building a successful brand, a successful business, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. The more good stories you tell, you bring people on board one at a time, and word starts to spread. And all of a sudden, your value becomes undeniable.
So this is something that that I will share with an entrepreneur, CEO, that idea that you're talking about, our brand needs to be. They understand that their brand needs to look the same. Their logo, their representation, the colors, all that needs to be consistent and aligned all the way through. They get that, but what sometimes I see that they miss is that it's their responsibility. I don't care if they're 3 months in, 3 years in, or 3 decades in. It's their responsibility as the leader to be the chief storyteller and the one to drive that all the way through their organization. Because if they don't have that tight from the person on the loading dock that's shipping stuff out to the salespeople to the C-suite, if they're not all singing from that same hymnal, right? If they're not, we're missing the boat. And if we expect salespeople to come up with a story, they're going to do it. Probably won't be the right one. Probably have the words in the wrong order. They might even put all the words in, but they'll have them all screwed up in the piece. So we almost have to give them. I mean, am I right in this? Because I've been fairly passionate about this with people, that we have to give them that information, and it's your responsibility, Mr. CEO, to do that.
Oh, yes, 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 and yes. That's exactly right. One of the biggest problems, of course, with C-suites is they are stretched to their maximum goal. And what do when they are stretched and they have no time in their calendar? They farm out communication to other people, typically to people who are very intelligent. They're extremely good at what it is that they do. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they are, in fact, the face, the voice, the heart behind the brand itself. They're simply writing to a capability or writing to a final goal. And they're going to do the best they can, but they're going to tell a very corporate story that's going to be mired in corporate speak. It's going to be mired in acronyms. It's going to be mired in inside importance, as opposed to telling the story of the customer or the story of the person that they are trying to connect with. They'll end up either, as you say, telling the wrong story or telling it unstructured or in the wrong order or in a way that simply will not impact and land with the target audience. Frequently in my sales team trainings, I work with companies, sometimes foundationally. Everybody knows pyramid structure, right? They know Barbara Minto. If anybody went through their master's in marketing, or for some people their bachelor's, they learned a lot about pyramid structure and the MECE concept. But they don't really remember what it was all about. They went and tried to read Barbara Minto, and they just thought, this is the most boring thing I've ever seen on paper. I don't know what the hell it's really all about. And what I'll do is I'll step back and say, good, let's forget everything in the written structure, and let's talk about what a good pyramid structure of a conversation looks like. You mentioned at the beginning, frequently this is on the corporate level, but it can also be on the personal level. In the nature of our relationships at home with our partners, our children, our family members, our friends. It applies all the way across the board. And it's the concept of a logical argument Not an argument to change someone's mind, but an argument to be crystal clear about what you want to say, how you want to say it, why you want to say it, and why you believe it creates value for someone else. So we start with a big general topic or an idea that we believe deeply and that we are so passionate about. Because as the leader of your brand, again, whether you're an entrepreneur or you're the leader of an 80,000 person multinational, if you are not excited about what you do, I guarantee you nobody else will ever be excited about what you do. If you are not passionate, you will not inspire passion in others. You're speaking to the wallet instead of to the human. And that's always the wrong way to conduct smart business. So the pyramid structure starts with this great idea, this concept of what we want to do or what we believe in. And then we support it with three large supporting concepts of here are the three main reasons why I believe this is the right way to go or the right thing to do. And I want you to understand it as well. But those three things below don't have any numbers attached to them. They're still conceptual. They're still ideas, something to spark imagination or inspiration or motivation. And then under those, we get to the backing arguments, the numbers, the metrics, the statistics that show why this is the right idea and therefore this is the path to success. So I frequently like to help a lot of sales teams to rethink how they are telling their corporate story and do it on a pyramid structure and make sure that each level of that pyramid is MISI, mutually exclusive and completely exhaustive, so that they tell such a strong story that the only response from the audience, whether it's one person or 10,000 people, the only response is, yeah, that's a great idea. I want to be a part of that. Absolutely. That makes perfect sense to me. And a lot of sales teams have forgotten how to do that because they are simply so good at selling their product. I know my product. Don't tell me any other way. I've been selling for 30 years. I'm phenomenal at it and I have the numbers to prove it. Okay, but can you be any better? And can you bring the rest of the sales team along to be equally as good as you are?
That's the challenge, right? That getting people to open up their mind to a new concept, to just getting a little better.
Yeah.
Right? If you get a little 10% better here, and you get a 10% better here, and a little bit here, you all of a sudden you're making, 30-40% more revenue, right? I mean, if you boil it down to the individual, because
Absolutely.
salespeople are, not everybody's motivated by money, but they're also they're compensated usually by that, and that's the essence of sales, is to grow. And if we're not growing, we're losing ground.
So true. I tell a story frequently about the hardest person usually that I coach. So let's say I'm working with a team and I'm coaching 40 different speakers for an event. I guarantee you, the most challenging speaker that I will work with is the one who is, in fact, the greatest expert on their capability, their product, their position. Because they feel, I know it, I've got it. Why do I need coaching? And what I'll always say is, you know who used to coach? Michael Jordan used to coach. Tiger Woods used to coach. The winner, the gold medal
But
winner.
they also had more than one coach.
Oh yeah, teams, right?
They literally had teams of people so they could focus on their craft.
Yes.
And I mean, we're not all Michael Jordan, but we damn well should try to elevate, right? And that's sort of my goal, is to elevate the sales profession,
Yes.
and eliminate the white short sleeve dress shirt with the clip on tie thing, right? That everybody thinks about. Because you ask people, right, and they do research, and they ask people to picture a salesperson, and that's what the used car salesman with the plaid jacket. I mean, that's what they think.
Yep.
And I, when somebody says, you don't sound like you want to sell me this, right? To me, that's when I like, all right, I got this one. I'm going to win this one. That's the only time I think that, because they're emotionally engaged in this conversation, and they're deep. And I can, I've made that connection that you're talking about, that passion, and the value part's easier, right? Because I tell people we're not the cheapest. If that's your criteria, then we should probably stop talking, because
Yeah.
I'm not the guy. There's plenty of people that will do this for less money. I don't give up at that point, but you got to set the stage, I think. So
Can I
where do
interrupt
they?
for just one moment? Hold on to
Yeah, yeah.
that thought. So I don't want to stop you because what you're saying is so right on target. Let's rethink value. So when I bring up value, value is not value of a product. Value is not
Right.
value of a dollar. Value is how can I create value for you? How
It's an
can I?
experience.
It's an experience. It goes to the Carl Buhner quote that's frequently attributed to Maya Angelou. It's they may not remember what you tell them, but they'll always remember how you made them feel.
How did she do that? How did she get that accreditation?
You know what? She had a bigger platform and a bigger stage than Carl Buhner did. And she
Okay.
actually said it in a very important format. She was on a good dais and a good stage when she said it. And because people hadn't heard it before, they attributed it to her, which is fine. I'm sure Carl Buhner would be every bit as delighted to say, hey, you know what I said is out there, whether they attribute it to me or to Maya Angelou, either way is fine. But it really is this idea of looking at what it is that you create, what you build, what you do, what you are attempting to sell. And instead of telling your story, try to tell your audience's story. Try to tell your consumer, your customer's story. So one of my other mantras, I talked about how I have 40 of them. My number one mantra, don't tell them what you want to tell them. Tell them what they want to hear. That is how you communicate with a buying public, with your sector, with your marketplace. You tell them what they want to hear and they will follow. When you tell their story, they end up rewarding you by becoming not only a customer, but by really connecting with your brand and lowering your attrition rates so that you maintain that customer for longer periods of time. That's what value is really all about. So I'm sorry to interrupt you on that.
No,
You were
no,
saying something else before, and I hope you remember what it was.
no, we're on the same page because I wanted to go to experience, and the value piece is that's what we're really talking about is making that connection with them and delivering that experience that's meaningful to them. It's not about us from a sales perspective or even a marketing perspective. It's always about that consumer, that customer, that prospect, right? Wherever we are in the spectrum and speaking to them where they are. But this is the concept that I'm good with and some people aren't. And that is that by doing that, we're attracting and repelling at the same time. And we're qualifying people. So the people that I mean, this is the way I was taught with sales. Like if you're going to get a no, when would you like to know? The end after you did all the work or early on in
Right
this
up front.
process?
Catch and release, baby.
So I'm good with the concept of like, well, you're pushing some people out. I'm not pushing them out. They're walking away because what we're talking about isn't their thing, isn't their it doesn't resonate. And that's good.
It's so good. That's empowering. It's not a
But
negative.
some people struggle with that as an entrepreneur, as a salesperson, as a sales leader. So how do you help them see that that is a good thing? It is empowering, aside from like pointing out the obvious.
So there are two approaches to this, and I just wrote down a note so I don't forget to bring them both up. So number one of the first things that we learn in storytelling in general, in sales, in marketing is do not try to be all things to all people. If you are marketing to everybody, you are marketing to nobody.
Hmm.
If the entire world is your potential customer, you haven't done enough thought about who you are really trying to attract and why that particular customer is the one that matters most to you. Now, that's not necessarily to say that you can't win over people who are outside your purview of what you have determined is your target audience. It just means that when you're scattershot with your sales approach, you're not going to create that individuality, that
Hmm.
direct credibility and impact that you are trying to create, and you end up damaging yourself. You are much better off. You're not writing off any of your
No,
potential buying
you're
public.
not.
You're targeting your message, and you're hoping that the people who really connect with that message are the ones that find you and you create the real relationship with. And the more you do that, you'll realize the more and more and more people do, in fact, relate to your message. So that's one thing to help people do that really empowers them and helps them to clarify their message for the marketplace. Second thing that I'll talk to a lot of people about, especially when they are speaking about their product and they have a certain set of time, whether that time is I've got 5 minutes chasing a doctor down the hallway of a medical clinic to try to get them to buy my drug or my particular piece of medical machinery, or I've got an hour on stage at a keynote. And I'll ask a lot of people that I coach and I'll say, all right, Tell me realistically, how much of your presentation or of your talk or of your communication is somebody going to remember 1 hour after you are done speaking? Wager a guess. And the optimists in the group will say, 20 to 30%. They'll remember about 20 to 30% of what I say. Okay, great. And then the pessimists will say 10%, maybe 12%. They'll say, okay, that's great. So you pessimists in the room, you're still supreme optimists, I'm sorry to tell you. The reality is your audience is likely to remember between 3 and 8% of what it is that you told them.
I was going to hold up 5 fingers and say it was 5%.
You would have been right there in the middle, but that's because you have so much sales experience and you've been doing this for so long that you know exactly what those numbers are. A lot of people find this depressing. Why in the world should I put together an entire sales presentation if they're going to forget anywhere between 92 and 97% of what it is that I say? And what I say is no. Think of it the other way around. Flip it on its head. It is empowering to you because now that you know that the bulk of what you talk about in any communication is going to slip through the cracks, you have the ability to target what is the 3 to 8% that I want them to remember about our conversation, about our communication, about my presentation, about my product, or about my brand, and you can guide it. And it really comes down to strong learning objectives. The strongest learning objective for your brand or for your sales story has nothing to do with you or your company. It's all about creating value, power, and success for your audience. And when you tell people how you are there to make them more successful, to change their status quo for the better, to make their future reality stronger than it is today, that they will always remember. And then as you started at the beginning of our conversation, you said, when it comes to the rest of the statistics, the details, the numbers, the KPIs, they're not going to remember it from the conversation. Next week, when they're back at their desk, they'll remember how much they enjoyed their conversation with you, and they'll go research all of that stuff on their own. They'll look at the website, the white paper, the mission statement. They'll look at the capabilities sheets, and they'll remind them.
And they're looking for congruency.
Yes. And empowerment. They want to feel like you are there for their benefit. You're there to make them the superstar, not yourself the superstar. Another thing I like to use in coaching is I like to talk about Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey. And I learned this from a very dear friend of mine in Germany who's a phenomenal speaker who teaches on this a lot. But it's the concept that you are guiding your audience. Again, whether it's one person or 10,000 people sitting in front of you, your target market, you are guiding them to their better future. You're getting them to take that first bold step out of their current reality and status quo towards something better down the road. But frequently, companies make a mistake, especially C-suite leaders make a mistake because they believe, I am the one on the hero's journey. No, your customer is the hero. You are the mentor. Your job is to create the hero status for them by mentoring them and guiding them toward the reality that they've been hunting for but never knew how to discover or find until they discovered you and your brand or your product, whatever it happens to be, because your product is what will eventually make them the hero. If you can tell them that story, you will always hook an audience and you will always hook a potential customer.
What's interesting to me is that I agree with everything you just said, but I've sat through with a whole leadership team, they were developing their archetype for their brand, right? And they chose a hero brand, right? And that was the concept that, they're trying to make the customer the hero, right? That's the whole purpose of that. And some of them are like rebels, right? Like Harley Davidson, I remember being a rebel. And the one that the brand archetype that I chose is the sage, right? That goofy little Yoda guy or Obi-Wan Kenobi, where
Sure.
I'm not the hero. They weren't the heroes in that story, right?
No.
That was the Jedi Knight guy.
Luke is the hero.
There you go. Thank you, because I haven't seen Star Wars since I was a kid. But that's even though they sat through that presentation, and they, in the afterglow of this, they were like talking about, we have to be the hero. And I'm like, did you not listen to anything that the really smart people said with the cool glasses on? It's like, you're not the hero. You're going to represent a brand that's going to make them the hero.
Yes. That's
right.
Exactly
Your cool little light fixture is amazing, but they don't care about that. They care about like how that makes them feel and what it does for their team and how all it. But they can even be, it's like you could take the horse to the water. You can't make them drink. I mean, so what we have to do is make them thirsty, right? To get them to like go drink the water. But even though it's like
Right.
in black and white, but some people are just going to struggle with it.
That's
They gotta learn the hard way.
That's really where connection comes into play, that third pillar that I talk about, right? So once you demonstrate value for someone else and you create the value that they have been seeking, even if they never knew that they were seeking it, and then you demonstrate your passion for creating that value for them and why you are so committed to what it is that you're doing and believe so deeply in it and want them to believe in it as well for their benefit. That third point is that connection. If you can figure out a way to establish a connection between your brand and your buyer, the connection between the salesperson and the customer that is not based on inking a contract. The contract comes down the road. That is the result of the connection and the relationship. And if you establish that connection and relationship, and how do you do it? It's human to human. It's person to person. It's what Yuri Hassan of the Hassan Lab at Princeton calls brain coupling. The concept that we can share experiences. Two people who've never met one another before already have shared experiences in place. And the more we can reveal those shared experiences, then the two of us become people who trust each other, who find credibility and value in one another, and it makes us then want to sign the contract eventually once we reach that point in the relationship. The difference is, instead of a one-time buyer, I will turn into a 20-year committed customer. Connection
Loyalty.
creates value and payoff.
Yeah, and that I mean that's beautifully said. But you think about the connection piece, right? Where you like we hadn't met prior to our conversation. There was a connection, right? But people today find so much pleasure in finding the differences,
Yeah.
right? But the thing is, if you're talking to another person on this planet, they're humans.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter if they're German or they're from, a different culture, a different religion, different political spectrum. We're all humans.
Yes.
So we got that, right? The old joke about, well, he likes Tom Petty, so he's got to be okay, right? I mean, it's there. I think if we just found that in sales or in our interactions with people in general, if we could just make that connection and find that piece, and then we can build from there, right? And we don't have to agree,
Right.
So, all right. So, how do people find your book? Where do they go get it? We'll put this in the notes, but I want you to tell us what's the best way to go find this.
Well, I appreciate that. So this is the book, as you were saying before, Nothing Gets Sold Until the Story Gets Told. I'll hold it up right here as well. And your copy is on the way to you, Walter. I didn't get a chance to send it to you in advance, but we're going to make that happen.
Thank you.
So you can find it in hardcover, you can find it in paperback, you can find it in ebook or audiobook read by me at all of the regular outlets, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Goodreads, wherever you like to buy books. You will have no trouble tracking this particular book down. It was just released about 4 weeks ago, so it is brand new out there on the market. You can also go to the website for the book. Very simple, corporatestorytelling.com. Very easy. If you want to find out more about me, that's at stevemulter.com, but the book is corporatestorytelling.com. And I'll mention one final thing. For any of your viewers, listeners who are interested, I offer a free e-guide. It's a PDF, easily downloadable e-guide called 5 Paths to Passionate Storytelling. And it's 5 immediate ways that anyone at any career level, education level, sales experience level, marketing experience level, doesn't matter who you are, anybody, if you put even one of these 5 paths into action, tomorrow you will have already up-leveled your corporate storytelling capabilities. Put all 5 of them into play, you're going to be an expert in no time at all. So the way that you get that, if you want it, is go to corporatestorytelling.com/guide, and then you'll put in the code SOLDTOLD23. SOLDTOLD23, all lowercase, and that's going to take you directly to that e-guide, and anybody can download it.
All right. Are you good with me putting that in the show notes, or you want to leave that on the?
Absolutely. Go for it.
Okay. All right. I would encourage anybody that is in sales or marketing that is trying to improve their relationships because that's what sales is about, is building relationships and connections with people. To go download that and take those ideas and put them, go get the book. And I think this is something that we can all, I think we could get on the right path, but we can always keep tweaking and making sure that this is working and resonating, and making sure that it's still on, revisiting it on a, not every day, every week, every month, but on a consistent basis, looking at and measuring our success. So I really appreciate all of these ideas. It's awesome. So I got one last question, Steve, that I ask everyone. Past or present, does Steve have a relationship with cigars?
Past, sorry to say. So here's the thing. When I was in my 20s, 30s, even maybe into my early to mid 40s, as a speaker, as somebody who's literally speaking on stages or on broadcasts or on streams every single day of my life, was no problem at all for me to enjoy a really good cigar. My buddy Doug has fantastic taste, and we always had an agreement between the two of us. Doug supplied the cigars, I supplied the booze, and between the two of us, we had some excellent evenings sitting out on his back porch here in Chicago and enjoying a beautiful summer night with a cigar in hand. And what I realized as I grew older was that my voice couldn't tolerate it anymore. And as somebody who relies on his voice to make a living and is always training, coaching people, and needs his voice to always be there reliable, I thought cigars are no longer a part of it. So instead, that's why I keep this close by. I don't usually do the day drinking, but like I said at the beginning, Walter, this is a special occasion. So here's to you. Final sip. I saved it for the end of our talk.
I appreciate the hat tip. That's it's big, because day drinking is something that people aren't always proud of.
No.
I get shit for having day drinking on a Saturday from some of my friends.
Oh, no. You do you. You do your own thing. You're totally good. I don't do it very often. Like I said, special occasions, and come on. If we've reached this age, or at this point in our lives, both personal and professional, where we can't enjoy a little drink midday from time to time, what are we living for? What's the whole point?
Well, it's not a habit, right?
Right, exactly.
So it's a great story. Appreciate it. Thank you. We're going to have corporatestorytelling.com and the way to find the PDF in the show notes.
Okay.
Thank you. Anything last you want to share? Or are we good?
This has been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you for the time, the opportunity, and thank you to all of your guests for not only loving what it is that you do, but listening in on our conversation.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it, Steve.